So
we
I'd
can
like to
start.
call the public meeting of BIFAC to order, and I'd like to say good morning and Happy New Year. And I would like to apologize for the delay in starting. I know we should have started at 10:20, and we are about a half an hour late, and I apologize for that. My name is Adele Imrie, and I'm chair of the TCHC Board's Building Investment, Finance, and Audit Committee. And again, I would like to welcome the public to today's committee meeting. It's our first of 2022. And again, in light of the need for social distancing to limit the spread of COVID, we are holding the meeting virtually. Let me begin with an acknowledgement of the land that each of us is on as we hold this virtual meeting in the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. During this public session, there's one report brought forward to the committee for information. It's from the IT department and it relates to the Homes project. There are also 6 reports recommending approval from the committee: the annual audit plan for 2022, a change order as it relates to the fire alarm monitoring service, a vendor award for residential package terminal air conditioning replacement, a contract award for site building repairs and retrofit at Lawrence Heights, and Green Municipal Fund Sustainable Affordable Housing Pilot Project Grant application, and a direct award for Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation transitions. For the deputations, we will continue to follow the process that we have previously established for both deputations from members of the public and voting during the courses of today's virtual meeting. Members of the public wanting to depute to an agenda item on today's agenda have the option to do so either by submitting a written deputation, which are circulated to the board the board members prior to the meeting, or being teleconferenced into today's meetings. I will note that there have not been any requests made to make either verbal deputations or did we receive any written deputations as it related to any matters noted on today's agenda. So I will move on to item 2, which is the approval of the agenda and review of the agenda item order. I will ask if there are any additions or deletions to the public agenda as presented. Hearing none, I will ask if there are any conflicts of interest as it relates to any items on the agenda today. Okay, hearing none, I would ask if I can have approval, or are there any consent agenda items that any members would like to pull for further discussion? Brian?
F.
Okay, the BIFAC public work plan. Are there any other items that we would like to pull for further discussion? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, excluding item 2F? John, thank you. Could I have a seconder? Nick, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. So Brian, could we move to 2F and your questions?
Just my only comment with regard to the work plan is that there should be a report back in relationship to the items that are in the work plan related to the seniors corporation, Seniors Housing Corporation, so that we're aware of how that will impact on the various items that are in the work plan, and so that there's regular reports or parts of reports in relationship to the items that are in the work plan.
So Dara, could I ask that you amend the work plan to incorporate seniors housing reporting?
Obviously,
Brian, are you
it will,
comfortable with
yes.
that motion?
Yeah. I can't read it, it's very small.
Sonia, could you make it a bit bigger for?
That's good, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks,
No,
Sonia.
that's great. Okay, thank you.
Are you comfortable with that, Brian?
Yeah, yes, just that obviously there will be financial impacts for both corporations, and we should understand the impacts of that within BIFAC.
Yeah, I think the committee agrees that that's very important. So could I have a motion to approve the work plan with the inclusion of the reporting as it relates to seniors housing? Brian, could I have a seconder? Anna, thank you very much. All in favor? Motion passed. Could I move to item number 3, the business arising from the public meeting minutes and the action items? Are there any comments, additions, deletions to the action item list? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the action item update? John, thank you. Naram, can you second? Thank you. All in favor? The action item update has been approved. Thank you. And we'll move on to the annual audit plan for 2022. And I am going to ask Karim Jasani to speak to that. Karim, I think you're on mute. Sorry.
I realize that.
Thank you.
Good morning. Sure. So the annual audit plan for 2022 is being presented for BIFAC's approval. As every year, several planning considerations were made when we made this plan. Namely, so we considered the projects that we have done over the last 5 years to see if we want to include any follow-up projects. And we have included 2 follow-up projects here in the 2022 plan. In addition to that, we've taken input from our ERM unit on the top organizational risks. In addition, we connected with the AG's office in the City of Toronto's Internal Audit Department to see if they have any plans on any audits at TCHC. And in addition to that, we have seen the projects that were carried forward from last year as approved by the BIFAC, and that has been included here as well. And the current year's plan has more projects than last year, and that is taking into account the additional resources. Last year, we had some vacancies in the department. So we are expecting that all those vacancies will be filled in 2022. That's why additional projects have been planned to account for the additional available resources. And, like last year, if there is any reprioritization or if there is any change in the plan, we will be bringing it to BIFAC for approval. So with that, we are requesting your approval for this plan, please, for 2022.
Can I ask the members if they have any questions or comments on the, Brian?
Just with regard to the hub operation review, I would hope that we could add another item looking at tenant utilization of the hubs. I mean, the hubs were implemented to bring services and decisions closer to the tenants, and in some way we need to get feedback from tenants on whether those goals will be achieved, and look at that aspect of the hub, and obviously wanting to continue to improve on ways we can do that.
Sure, definitely. We will include that in the scope of this audit. This audit will be done in 2022, as well as all the future audits. We will be selecting different hubs from different regions, and we will ensure that we have included this item in our scope.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Karim as it relates to the 2022 audit plan? Okay, could I have a motion to approve the 2022 plan? Nick and John seconder, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And we certainly appreciate your efforts, Karim. It's very important to the organization and certainly it's valuable information for BIFAC. So thank you very much.
Thank you for support from BIFAC members.
Thanks. We'll move on to item number 5, which is the change order for the fire alarm monitoring service. And I am going to turn this over to John. There. Hi.
Morning, Madam Chair and committee members. The report for item 5 was in front of the committee today seeks approval for a change order to Fire Alarm Inc. API in the amount of $743,948. As outlined in the report, of that amount, $372,948 are for services that have been rendered from March 1st to December 31st last year. An additional $159,000 is being requested for approval for services to be delivered from January 1st to March 31st of this year, which brings us to the end of the current contract. But as well, an additional $212,000, as you can see there in item C, for a contract extension that will take us from April 1st to July 31st, and which will really enable the team to complete and award the contract for the new contract, should I say, with the RFP being out now in the market. With this recommended change order, it will ensure that we continue to provide continuity of services with respect to fire alarm monitoring equipment, integrated key box across the portfolio, but it will also address costs that have been incurred that were not included in the original scope due to unforeseen issues, mainly related to service calls to repair equipment that have been vandalized in the buildings, but as well relocation of equipment that we've had to do as a result of construction of the buildings, upgrades to fire alarm panels, as well as addressing vandalism through the buildings. And as I mentioned, the extra 4 months will ensure that we have enough runway for the team to complete and award the new contract for this program. And with that, Madam Chair, I'm able to take any questions or comments on the report and its contents.
Can I ask if anyone has any questions for John? John? You're on mute, John.
Yes, there was a reference to vandalism. Can you talk a little bit about the frequency with which that occurs?
So the vandalism refers to the integrated key box. So mainly these are key boxes are for vendors that are mainly located in the vestibule, building vestibule, and sometimes these are vandalized on off hours. And you know, from what I gather from the team, this happens several times a month. And so with that, we take measures to prevent and deter vandalism. But when they do occur and they reach a threshold, we are forced to move these key boxes to certain locations where we believe would reduce the vandalism, but they do occur at a regular frequency.
So what is a key box?
Like the key box, so the key box are keys for the vendors. So let's say there's vendors need to access the buildings after hours. Vendors would arrive to the buildings. They would call client care. Client care would then remotely open these key box, and in the key box would have a set of keys for selected rooms in the buildings.
I see. Okay. All right. And sorry. So how does that relate to the damage to fire alarms?
They're both covered in the same contract. So there's two components. There's the fire alarm monitoring and equipment, but it's also under the same contract they provide and install the integrated key box. It was the way the program was designed back in 2014.
And is there occasionally damages? Because we know that fire alarms being set off is a problem. And is there damage that's actually done to the fire alarms and to disable fire alarms in the buildings?
What we've seen in the buildings have been damages to the sprinklers, mostly the common spaces, but not really to the panel itself, because those are under behind a selected rooms, protected rooms, but it's mostly what's visible in the common areas.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian?
Does any of this have any relationship to the issue of fire, the sprinkler systems that we found were defective?
So, I mean, this is part of the fire alarm monitoring. So this covers the monitoring of the system. So certainly it's connected to those, Brian. So when you're thinking about the interface between the sprinklers to the actual panel itself, which is the brain of the system of the building. So certainly there's a connection, but this contract is primarily related to the monitoring and relay of signals between API, TCHC, and TFS.
So I guess more of my concern was any of the cost increased as a result of the deficiency we found in the sprinkler heads?
No, not for this contract line.
And my second question is with regards to what John raised. Obviously, there's a huge expense when there are false fire alarms, bringing fire trucks to that. Has that been taken into consideration in location and dealing with where these boxes are and the reduction of that?
So what we've done in the last little while, I mean, this has been an ongoing discussion with this subcommittee, is that there's a working group that's been formed with TFS and TCHC. This group has been in place for upwards of 2 years now, and what we've looked at are the top buildings. So we know the list of buildings where our false fire alarms occur. We've taken a building by building review along with with TFS, operations, CSU, and what we're doing is a site-by-site action plan. So we recognize that each building, each community has different circumstances that lead to false fire alarms. So we're taking more of a targeted approach. But if in this case, if there are actions we need to take that relates to this program, the team will consider it and work with TFS to work through those action items.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Could I ask, it's not related to this specific contract, but have the number of false fire alarms been reduced? I know that was.
So I had a report in place in front of me end of December, based on those figures that they were at the same level as the previous year. So while we didn't see an increase, we were at the same levels as last year. We've plateaued a bit.
Okay, because I know we spend millions on that. The other question I had was there's a comment in the report about the invoices have been held pending our approval. I just question whether that's a viable way to deal with this, and as it relates to our supplier. The work's been done.
The work's been done. Absolutely correct. The invoices were held because of the POs were drawn out. So not ideal. We've had the vendor has been very patient with us, but has continued to work with us and continue to deliver the services, which is important for us.
Okay. Are there any other questions for John? Could I have a motion to approve the change order as it relates to the fire alarm monitoring service? John?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder? Naram, thank you. All in favor? Anna, are you okay? Sorry. Thank you. Your motion's been approved. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to item number 6. There's a few items in number 6. So 6A is the vendor award for residential package terminal air conditioning replacement program. And I'm going to turn this over to Alan.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair and BIFAC committee members. The first item, 6A, is a competitively procured award for a 6-year contract made up of an initial period with initial period of 3 years with 3 one-year renewal options for the purchase and installation of replacement PTAC units and any associated demand repair services. The total contract award for the total period is $7.5 million, with $7.3 million being for the replacement equipment and services related to that, to the installation of it, and $200,000 for small miscellaneous demand repairs that may come up. The recommended vendor is ClimateWorks, who's passed the rated criteria in the RFP process and had the low bid. These requested amounts are upset limits and are based on historic spend. Approval of this award will ensure that we have a contract in place to replace PTAX units when they are beyond an economic repair, and it's essential to ensure that we have minimal disruption to our tenants. The award will be subject to the quarterly reconciliation to ensure that it's in compliance within the awarded amounts. Happy to take any questions, and your approval is requested.
Are there any questions for Alan? Anna?
So Alan, this is just for upkeeping of units, right? Because we had a big replacement program that has been finished, correct? The window replacement units?
These are different than the air conditioner exchange program. These are, think of like a hotel where you have the unit that provides heating and cooling to the unit. So these are not the air conditioners that were replaced through the AC program. These are separate units that actually provide heating and cooling to units. We have a number of buildings across the city, and this is how the tenant units are heated and cooled through these units.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Alan on this item? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the contract award? John? Brian, seconder, thank you. All in favor? Okay, motion has been approved. Alan, could I ask you to take us to item number 6B, which is the contract award for the site building repairs and retrofit at Lawrence Avenue?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 6B is another competitively procured award for the retrofit projects that at 3943 and 3945 Lawrence Avenue East in the amount of $7.9 million to Trinity Services Limited, who is a successful low bidder on this RFP. This project will provide much needed retrofit work on these buildings to improve tenant comfort, improve building energy efficiency, and restore the building to a state of good repair. The scope of work includes such items as replacing the windows, replacing the roof, balcony repairs, improving ventilation in tenant units and in the building in general, replacing the mechanical equipment, upgrades to laundry and tenant amenity spaces, accessibility improvements, as well as increasing security and lighting upgrades and exterior landscape work. This contractor has successfully completed a large number of projects for TCHC in the past. And as this is a large-scale project and that will be disruptive to our tenants, the FM Tenant Capital Engagement Team will be used to help tenants understand the scope of work and what to expect during the project. And this will be done before the project begins, as well as the support will be available throughout the project to help answer any questions or concerns that our tenants may have, because we realize this is a long project, it's an extensive project, but absolutely at the end of the day, the tenants will have a much better performing building. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions and request your approval for these necessary repairs.
Anna?
Thank you. When I Googled the address of the building and I saw some low rise around this building, are those low rise units also TCHC units?
If I could, through you, Madam
Sheila?
Chair.
Yes.
This award is specific to the low-rise units on the Lawrence Orton site.
Okay.
So you may remember we did significant upgrades on the tower. There was a childcare center added to the site. This is the last piece of restoring that full development to a state of good repair.
Okay, so it's that's why you're doing the landscaping as well, because now you're completing the whole development.
Correct.
Thank you.
Brian?
Just have the number of units that are going to be impacted.
I would have to get that information for you. I'll actually, I know I have colleagues on the line here. If they would be able.
It says 337 in the building.
Yeah.
337.
Sorry, you're correct.
Yeah, that's in the report, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, good. I didn't see that.
Sorry
Thank
about
you. Oh, yes, I see it now.
John?
Yeah, so what exactly is being done and over what period of time is this contract to run?
So the contract will take a little over 2 years to complete all of the work. And we're replacing the roof, we're replacing the windows, we're doing balcony repairs, upgrades to the mechanical equipment, improving ventilation within the tenant units. We've got some landscape work that's being done. We're doing accessibility upgrades, as well as we're improving the laundry facilities and tenant amenities. And there is actually also some security upgrades, like with lighting. Basically it's taking a look at everything. What do we need to do?
So all of the windows are being replaced?
Correct.
And does that include the windows in the common areas as well?
We would look at all windows in the building and have them replaced with what needs to be replaced. Yes.
And the building is from 1970. Are there any changes for the elevator system, or is that not included?
The elevator would not be included in this project.
There actually aren't elevators. These are low-rise townhouses.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, they're not townhouses. They're low-rise building blocks.
Walk-ups, yeah.
Walk-ups.
Okay. And in terms of improved efficiency and payback, has that calculation been made? Payback on energy efficiency?
We do take a look at it, and maybe I can. Noah, are you able to comment on that from the design perspective?
Sure, I am. Yes, energy modeling is a staple technical review that we do when we take on an investment this large. We don't a straight up payback model doesn't necessarily figure in when you're talking about taking care of capital needs as well, right? We try to overlap every dollar, so every capital need we try to enhance with if there's an envelope deficiency that requires remedy, we add insulation at that point, right? So we're sort of ganging those two things together. But yes, in this project, we'll be in keeping with a minimum 25% reduction in its operating energy, in keeping with
how much of the almost
goals.
How much of the almost $8 million is going toward energy efficiency improvements?
It's hard again to parse it out. It's very linked. For instance, the low rise has very little ventilation systems existing. So introducing ventilation systems, for instance, increases energy consumption in a way, but again, goes a long way towards tenant comfort and healthy living. When we're repairing the walls and adding insulation, it's difficult to parse out what's a repair and what's an energy enhancement in an action like that. But we could give you a breakdown by discipline on how that contract breaks down, for instance, mechanical, electrical, architectural, and landscape.
I don't need it for this. I mean, I just think it would be helpful to know because we did talk about improving, a new roof, new windows. That usually speaks to improved energy efficiency. And sometimes I've seen where there's, the expenditure is laid out there, and then the payback period over 25 or 30 years is also given. But so I'll just that would be good to know, perhaps for future reports.
Brian?
Obviously, it's too late at this point, but I wonder when we're doing these projects and the city's need for more affordable housing, had this site ever been reviewed in terms of its capacity being, I don't know the site, but assuming since it's on Lawrence Avenue and there's a lot of development going on those main avenues right now, was it ever contemplated increasing the density in terms of number of units that could be provided on these sites? Spending over $23,000 per unit just takes us back to where we currently are. But obviously, if there's an opportunity to create more affordable housing, we should always look at that option and review it to see whether it's feasible.
Alan, Sheila, I'm not sure who
So
should
I
be
know,
addressing that.
yeah, I believe that is absolutely a tremendous point. The city does need more affordable housing. We talk about it all the time. I know that through our development division and Create TO, that they are undertaking a portfolio review and we'll be looking for those opportunities. And I know that Kelly and her team are actively working with the Housing Secretariat to look for those opportunities, but Lawrence Orton is currently part of the capital repair program, and our focus has been to restore the entire development to a state of good repair, improve the living environment for these tenants. We did secure city funding on this site and have opened a childcare center, changing the look and feel of the community, but it was not a site that was targeted by the Housing Secretariat or the Development Division for additional affordable rental.
Thank you. I realize it's too far on in the process. I just think that any future sites, especially where we can increase housing, we should look at the feasibility of those.
Anna?
Sorry, just a couple more questions on that. So Sheila, a few years ago, TCHC did a whole portfolio review and market analysis and sounded the market on a whole bunch of sites. Was this site ever included in there as tested? Did we test this out, or we always saw it as non really developable?
I'm going to turn that question over to Kelly. She was involved in that review. Kelly?
Through the chair, this site was not part of one of the sites we went to market on an RFEOI. It's there's, I think, without going into too much detail, I think there's some physical challenges and site constraints that didn't put it at the top of the list.
Kelly's correct. It does back onto a ravine, and we've had to do some pretty extensive work with the TRCA to get approval for this work, to stabilize the bank and make sure that the buildings are going to be there for the long haul.
Anna?
One more question.
Yep.
I noticed in the report we had the evaluation on the contractor for other projects at 2.98 over 5. Can you share some of the challenges that we've had? I mean, I would like to see this number go up.
Yeah,
I think it's flying colors.
I'll turn it over to Alan, but I would say that's like 3 out of 5. And in our teams are pretty tough on the contractors when they evaluate them. That's a pretty reasonable score. But Alan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sheila. Yes, you're right. That is a reasonable score. I know that it looks low, but this, based on the way the scoring is, actually a 2.5 is considered like a good mark. We use the same evaluation score that's used in the city contractor performance evaluations, and just the way it's set up, like I say, a 2.5, which you might look at and think, well, that's not a good score at all. It actually is. So we are tough on how we evaluate the contractor, but we haven't had any significant challenges with this contractor. Like any contractor, they do need to be managed, and they are managed on a regular basis through the TCHC project lead that's assigned to the project, as well as we do have our consultants as well that work together with us to manage the contractors to make sure that they perform as expected.
Okay. Chair, I think that, I mean, given that these numbers are in the report, I mean, if we don't know what they mean nothing. So I think it'd be important for us to have the background on what do these scores mean? Can staff just share with us so that when we look at, I mean, you're absolutely right, Alan. When I look at 2.5 out of 5, I think that's horrible. So, and you're telling me it's great. So,
Yeah.
I won't say great, but it is an acceptable score, and we can certainly share the contractor performance evaluation.
I think we need to put this into context for us to, as a BIFAC, to understand what exactly these scores mean and how you're scoring I think it'd be good to share it with us.
I agree with Anna. I also think trends are important. If a contractor is, deficient in a certain area consistently, I do think that that's important as we make our decisions.
Certainly, I can work with our procurement team. They own the the form, and as I say, we took exactly what the city uses in terms of their contractor performance evaluation, and we can certainly share the evaluation with the BIFAC committee and walk through it.
And I think that that's what Anna is requesting, so that we understand how you rank them, what the criteria is, and what your basis for scoring is. So Anna, is that what you're asking for? Okay. Alan, is this a fixed price contract?
Yes.
Okay. And I think there might be, are there any other questions before I? So Alan, I think there might be a typo because it says that it's part of the 2021 budget.
It would be started as part of the 2021 budget, and this is a multi-year project. So, for example, the design would have been part of the 2021 budget, and then this will be included in the 2022 budget. And there will be, as this is a long-term project, there will be parts of it that will be in the 2023 budget because it's a multi-year project. And we do track all of our multi-year projects through the budgeting process to ensure that we have proper budget in it. But it started as a 2021 project. But I do see what you're saying, that we could
So you're
be more
carrying it
clear.
over, or someone else incurred the design costs? That was another supplier?
Well, the design costs would have been in the 2021 budget. The initial design costs that were incurred in order to get us to this point, they would have been included in the 2021 budget, yes. And then the construction will be in the 2022 budget, as well as there will be costs in the 2023 budget because this is a multi-year project.
But as it relates to this contract, it's 2022 and forward.
True, yes.
Okay. I don't think that was quite clear. Are there any other are there any other questions for Alan on 6B? Okay, could I have a motion to approve this contract award to Trinity? John, thank you. Anna, seconder, thank you. All in favor? Okay, motion carried. Alan, I will ask you to take us to 6C, which is the grant application. And I have to say, when I saw this on the agenda, I was thinking it was millions of dollars because it was coming to BIFAC, but it's not. It's a technicality.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I wish I were bringing forward $1 million grant application. However, your correct. Item 6C is to seek approval to complete the application process for a $500,000 grant from the federal custodian municipalities through their Green Municipal Fund. This funding will be used to assist the completion of a retrofit project at our 575 Danforth building, which includes a scope of work that will reduce energy use while improving tenant comfort. The project's currently under preliminary design, and this will help build our knowledge. We're looking at putting things into this building to get it on the road to be a net zero type building, and also to look at what we can learn with passive house retrofits. So it's a great project. It's and also excellent that we can get a $500,000 grant. I agree. I wish it were for much more, but 500,000 is what we can get on this one. So we will absolutely take it. So the application requires a resolution from the board of directors confirming the application, and thus our request for this approval.
And I'm certainly not sneezing at $500,000. It was just because it required BIFAC approval. I was presuming that it was of such a large scope that it required our approval. John?
So I've got a question, not necessarily about this, but somewhat related, and that I used to sit on the Toronto Atmospheric Fund, and I recall that they've done work with Toronto Community Housing. Is that
Absolutely.
Is that work that still occurs, and is that work brought to the attention of the board from time to time?
Yes, we are actively engaged with TAF and work with them, have a great partnership with them. And when there are opportunities for us to partner together on projects, we absolutely do that. And we would bring those awards through to BIFAC as needed for approval. But yes, it's absolutely an active relationship that we have and continue to have.
Great, thank you. That's the only question. This is a great. I'm glad to support this, of course.
Are there any other questions? So sorry, Dara, did you have your, Brian, do you have your hand up? No.
Yes, I just wanted to, the payback on this, the 25% reduction, I mean, will the savings, have we quantified what those savings would be?
That's something that we'll look at as we go through the design process with this. This is very preliminary at this point in time, but absolutely that will be taken into consideration as we work through this.
Okay.
I just wanted to add that I've slightly modified the motion, and I think it's been pointed out where we are asking BIFAC and the board to approve this motion because it's a requirement of the FCM process. And I want to make sure that the motion that we provide to FCM as evidence of the board's approval of the process is specific enough. So I've slightly modified the language to be more specific to the application that is currently before them. And I just wanted the committee to be aware of that so that we don't end up passing a motion that's different from what's in the report without the committee's knowledge.
Do any members have any questions or comments on the amended motion?
Sorry, it just authorizes the application for grant funding in the amount from the fund. I think that's what they require as part of their approval process, which is why this matters here.
Okay, so this meets their criteria.
As I understand their criteria, yes.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on the motion as it's been presented? Okay, hearing that, and I'm sorry, are there any other questions for Alan as it relates to the application? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion to approve? John, thank you. Brian, seconder, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Good luck, Alan.
Thank you.
I hope you're successful. Could I just ask on item 6B, could I just ask that Anna's request as to the understanding of the scoring be added to our action list?
I made a note.
Okay, thank you, Dara. We'll move on to item number 7, which is the direct award as it relates to Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation transition and its homes. And I'm going to turn this over to Louisa.
Thank you, Chair Emery. Good morning, everyone. I'm seeking approval for a direct award to Yardi Canada for professional services to implement the changes to our home solution in support of the transition to Toronto Seniors Housing for a limit of $711,801. BIFAC approval is required for this contract as it exceeds the authority of our Chief Executive Officer to approve a direct award. The successful transition of the operations of 83 senior designated buildings to the newly formed Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation on June 1st will result in Toronto Seniors Housing having the information and systems needed to successfully function as a separate legal entity. This is a very aggressive timeline, and significant concurrent work is required to ensure a successful transition. This proposal is based on a project duration of up to 28 weeks of total effort implemented into 2 phases. Phase 1 is expected to be up to 18 weeks and will involve the initial implementations of changes to support the transition. And also during the second phase 2, it's expected to be 6 to 12 weeks, which will address any changes that may surface post-transition and to provide post-go-live support to Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. Yardi will work with both corporations, Toronto Seniors Housing and Toronto Community Housing, to make configuration changes to reflect a legal, separate, and distinct entity. We did review the detailed scope of work with both organizations, and both organizations approved to the work. As the committee is aware, Yardi is the current implementation partner for our homes project and the original equipment manufacturers for the Yardi solution that we have implemented, and they have in-depth knowledge of their product as well as TCHC's business requirements. We are also in the final phase of our homes implementation, and procuring another vendor to complete the scope of work would introduce unnecessary complexity in the coordination of those 2 projects. In addition, Toronto Community Housing would not be able to initiate a procurement award and onboard a new partner before the June 1st deadline. Therefore, I'm seeking the committee's approval for this direct award.
Are there any questions for Louisa? John?
Not to split hairs, because I know we received substantial funding from the city, but as this was the city's direction to create the seniors housing unit, why isn't the city paying for this?
Go ahead, Jack. I think you're going to respond to that question.
Through you, Chair Emery, it was submitted as part of our budget process this year, and there is funding that has actually been allocated towards this. So if we have our full budget approval, then this will be funded through that ask to the city as well.
I mean, that's a reasonable answer. And I mean, of course, I know we received, massive amounts of money from the city to support the organization. It just, I thought an expense from this would have come out of one of their line items instead of ours. That's all. That's it, Adele.
Okay, I do think, Roseanne, you can confirm that it's part of our one-time.
Yes, it's part of that. So there's a $9.5 million one-time request in the city's throughout the city budget process, and there's 2.7 allocate the seniors transition, including that.
Got it.
And there would be sufficient contingency in there that if there's any overages, the city would. Louisa, I don't know if that's you or Roseanne.
I believe there's sufficient contingency, but I'll defer to Louisa as 1.1 in there for the total home solution.
Yeah, so within this scope of work, we have contingency in there. The challenge is that we're still working to define some of the parameters around the changes within homes, as there's still conversations with respect to some questions about some of the tenant information that we may need to adjust. But yes, I believe there is sufficient contingency within this plan.
Okay, so if there's change in scope or change in parameters, the city will still, okay. Brian?
This is, excuse me, this is just one area, and I'm sure there'll be a number of areas that require additional work in the transition. And I'm just wondering whether there's a way to track those costs related to the apportioning work related to the setup of the seniors corporation.
Who would like to speak to that?
Through you, Chair Emery.
Okay.
Paula, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, thank you. To you, Chair Emery, we are actually tracking the financial cost implications of the transition. In our report for this afternoon, we are going to be speaking about the way in which we're doing that. We're also identifying for the city, because we are working closely with them, any additional costs that we expect through the transition itself, any implications to the way in which our budget is currently supported through the city. And as we do our discovery work, which is currently underway, those items are becoming more clear. And we have a direct line to the city in terms of those discussions.
And in terms of the homes project, is it perceived that it will be set up independently for this seniors housing corporation, or will we still be involved in maintaining it, operating the systems?
Paula, I'm not sure if you want to respond to that, but yes, as part of the work we're doing with respect to service delivery, Toronto Community Housing will continue to support all the systems for Toronto Seniors Housing.
Anna, did you have your hand? You did. Okay. Oh, sorry, Brian. I didn't. Did you have a follow-up?
I just, then presumably there'll be a purchase of service arrangement between the two corporations.
Yes, I can respond to that through you, Chair. I mean, we are establishing a shared services agreement with a service delivery model attached to that, which will identify where those key dependencies are for both organizations.
Thank you.
So Anna?
So will this create a totally separate system for the Seniors Corporation? Is that it?
No, we will be sharing the same instance of our home solution, but it will be in the system as a distinct corporation.
So TCHC will still be the main, have a contract, and so the
Correct.
Seniors Corporation on an annual basis, I guess, will have to pay us so we can pay for the whole service.
Correct. I believe that's in part of the comments that Paula made, that there is in progress that delivery agreement. Yes.
Thank you.
Louisa, can I just ask, it's a pretty aggressive timeline, and you have mentioned that, you know, that as far as homes training and that there's been delays because of COVID. Is that going to impact the achievement?
So the majority
of the June timeline?
Yeah, the majority of the changes reflect those systems already implemented. So we speak to the financials and the tenancy management, right? The final implementation has minimal impact to the Seniors Housing Corporation. So both, there's minimal changes that would be required. So I see no impact to that, but our goal is to complete this final, which will be in the next report, the final launch of our homes before we transition on June 1st for seniors housing.
Okay, so COVID won't impact this.
No.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Louisa or Paula? Okay, hearing none. Could I have a motion to approve the direct award to Yardi? Nick, thank you. John, seconder, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Motion has been passed, and I will move on to item number 8, which is the Q4 2021 Homes Project Update. And Louisa, back to you.
Thank you very much. I just want to bring to the committee's attention in this quarterly report that we had originally intended to start the training for our final launch of the Homes project in December, and which is evident in the news. The Homes Project Management Office completed a review with our key stakeholders to determine whether it was actually feasible to begin in-person training in January in light of the recent developments with the COVID-19 pandemic. There is great concern in the operational area that increased illness absences compounded by training absences would significantly impact the service we deliver to our tenants. Therefore, the result was a decision to postpone the start of training and develop a revised training plan to incorporate a hybrid approach, reduce class sizes from our original plan, and enhance protocols. The revised training plan also includes a contingency plan for us to proceed with virtual training to avoid any further delays of our final launch. Should we not be able to proceed in-person training, we will pivot to virtual training. A new plan was provided to our Home Steering Committee and our Emergency Operations Center for COVID-19. The HOMES project is now scheduled to launch its final phase on May 9th. And with respect to the cost of this, the HOMES project estimated the total cost, which will be allocated to COVID-19 expenses as a result of this training delay, to be estimated between 1.2 and 1.5 million. That's the main area of the project update that I wanted to bring to the attention of the committee. We are proceeding with the final work. We are well on track for our technical review. We're just finalizing some reporting. We're going through some issue management, but the delay is entirely due to the fact that we cannot launch training yet. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sorry. Are there any questions for Louisa as it relates to this item? Anna?
Can you maybe share with us and talk a little bit on how to get back on track and what do you expect? You're on mute, Louisa.
Sorry, I should know better. I'm the technical person here. I should know stuff on mute. With this new revised schedule, we are going to stay on track. We don't anticipate any further delays. We are going to start launching some virtual training sessions to provide the organization, for those who have not been involved in the original implementation, some overview of the systems. And then our plan is to start in-person training mid-March. Again, if we are not able to do so, we will pivot to virtual, and we will launch on May 9th, barring any catastrophe that happens. Of course, I can't predict, but our plan is to stay on track now and complete our final launch on May 9th.
And why haven't we considered these virtual trainings earlier? I mean,
yeah,
it's been 2 years of a pandemic.
Yeah, so this final phase is always intended to be in person. This is our building staff, and I believe Sheila is also on the call. This is our building staff, and it is highly recommended in order for them to adopt to this new solution that we deliver the training in person. There is, to pivot to virtual is not optimal for us at all in this final launch. It was always intended to do in person. If we have to pivot to virtual training, we will have to incorporate considerable post-go live refresher and support to ensure adoption. So virtual is just not conducive to this group.
If I may add, Chair Emery, to the Deputy Mayor, because of some of the level of absences that we've had with our frontline staff and the changes that we've had to make in order to continue operations, we weren't able to start the virtual training any sooner. We're just starting to become a bit more stabilized. And so we've outlined a plan based on what we think where we'll begin to have staff availability.
And are we, I mean, nobody knows where we're going to go with this pandemic, right? But I think that people have started to realize that, you know, it gets better in the summer, people are more outside. Like, are we putting a schedule together that takes advantage of some of that maybe we can do some of that training in those months, maybe even outside? Like, are we taking that in consideration? Because I think people say that, you know, we're going to have to learn to live with this.
The training is going to occur during the spring months, early spring months, and we are putting in some significant COVID protocols. Again, the one factor that is into this is the transition of the Seniors Housing Corporation as well, and we want to conclude the project prior to that transition.
Sorry, can you clarify that? You want to conclude which project before you start the Seniors Housing transition?
No, not before we start the work that we just specified.
Okay.
Just to complete the final launch before the June 1st transition of the home solution.
Oh, okay. And this is in our COVID budget expense for 2022. And if you do the virtual training And then you said that you would have to do follow-up in-person training. Do your costs incorporate that?
Yes,
If that's necessary?
yes, we've incorporated that in our costs.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Louisa as it relates to this matter? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion to receive the Homes update for Q4? Brian? Thank you. Could I have a seconder? John? Great. All in favor? Great. Thank you, Louisa. Can I ask if is there any other business to bring to the BIFAC public meeting? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion to adjourn? Anna, thank you. Nick, seconder, thank you. All in favor? So thank you all for your time today, and stay warm.
Thank you, Madam Chair.